I have two truly great hunting rifles here today that I think all of us can learn some really valuable lessons from. And these rifles don't need any introduction to those of you in the Commonwealth Nations, but for those of you not familiar with them, these are Lee Enfields, chambered in .303 British. And not only are these truly great hunting rifles, these were truly great battle rifles. And just my personal opinion here, I think these were the greatest battle rifles of World War I and World War II, only equaled by the M1 Garand. So yeah, I'm saying this was a better rifle than the M98 Mauser. It's a better battle rifle than the 1903 Springfield, 1917 Eddystone, the Japanese Arisaka. And I know that's a pretty big claim there, but let me tell you why I think that. Now, a lot of those rifles I just mentioned are technically better rifles than the Enfields here. These were old designs, pretty much outdated by World War II. And the Lee Enfields, they use rear locking lugs. So the bolt actually locks into the action here in the rear as opposed to the Mauser 98 bolt, which has front locking lugs and has went on to pretty much become the standard for all modern rifles. And this is also how all the rifles, based on the Mauser 98 action worked: 1903 Springfield, 1917 Eddystone. And the disadvantage, there's several disadvantages to the rear locking lugs. As the lugs wore, the bolt essentially became shorter. It went further back. That created headspace problems. And the .303 cartridge was not as powerful of a cartridge as the 30-06 Springfield or the 8mm Mauser. This action wasn't as strong as the other actions. Right. But here's the big lesson from all this. And this is pretty important stuff here. You have to work with what you got, not what you wish you had. And being the best, being great, successful, succeeding, all that good stuff, it's based on, maximizing your advantages and minimizing your weaknesses. That's how you get to be the best. Well, that's what the Brits and the Commonwealth Nations did with these rifles. Okay, weakness of this. You can get headspace problems. All right, well, to fix this, you just screw the head of the bolt off. And the bolt head here, they made them in 4 different sizes. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So as you develop headspace problems, you just screw this off and replace it with the next size, which is slightly larger. Problem solved. I mean, that's a pretty simple solution. All right, and the advantages to this. Okay, well, there's some advantages to the rear locking lugs. And to the bolt here, the design of the bolt, which it was designed by an American, ironically enough, James Ferris Lee. And speaking of ironies, the Commonwealth Nations, their greatest battle rifle ever was designed by an American, or the action. And for the Americans, our greatest battle rifle was designed by a Canadian, John Garand. That's irony for you. But the advantage of the rear locking lug, first of all, it is exceptionally smooth because there's no front lugs to bind up or drag when you're cycling the action. The next advantage, you had a fairly short bolt throw. I mean, for the standards of that time. That was pretty convenient. And this bolt, it locked on closing, not on opening like all of the Mauser-based rifles. So what you end up with is a really fast cycling rifle. And these cycle fast. All right. Well, the Brits and Commonwealth Nations, they took advantage of that. And, okay, fast cycling bolt, Well, they made the locking lugs so that they're basically an interrupted thread. So they're on an angle just like a thread would be. Well, that gives you a camming action so that when you do lock the bolt, it's really smooth and just, again, speeds up the process. And that's what they were shooting for, speed. They took advantage of speed on these rifles. Then they added a 10-round box magazine, unheard of at the time. Well, if you've got a fast cycling rifle and you're going to shoot it fast, you need to be able to feed it. So this rifle here had twice the ammo capacity of the other bolt action rifles out there, which were pretty much 5 shots because they had internal magazines. So now you got a really fast cycling bolt action, and you've got a 10-round magazine. Now they didn't change magazines like we do today. They used stripper clips in, but still had 10 rounds. You had twice as many rounds as the other bolt actions out there. And 2 more rounds than the M1 Garand. The M1 Garand's semi-auto, so they were faster, semi-auto. But the shot capacity on this was still 2 more rounds. Okay. And then, and this is the important part, the Brits and Commonwealth Nations trained their soldiers and Marines to shoot fast. They took full advantage of these. And what you ended up with was more firepower than anybody else out there. There's numerous stories of Germans coming under fire in World War I. They ran into a group of, Brits, Canadians, Australians, whoever. They thought they were under machine gun fire. Okay, that's pretty fast shooting. And not only were they trained to shoot fast, they were trained to shoot accurately. The world record for rapid controlled bolt action fire was set in, I believe, 1914 by British Army training sergeant, Sergeant Snoxwell, I believe it was. And he set the world record. He put 38 rounds on a 12-inch target at 300 yards in 1 minute. All right, think about that for just a moment. He put 38 rounds from this bolt action. Actually, it's probably this one. It would have been a number 1 Mark III, most likely. He put 38 rounds on a 12-inch target at 300 yards in 1 minute. And he would have had to reload 3 times because it's a 10-shot magazine. That's some firepower. Right? Nobody else could match that. And again, the M1 Garand could, and that didn't come on until World War II. And it could match it, but that's because it was semi-auto, and then it, like I say, this still held 2 more rounds than it did. That's pretty impressive. And that's why I think this was the best battle rifle of World War I and World War II. This along with the M1. Right. Even though technically it never was the greatest rifle. So that's why I say it's about making the most of what you have, not what you wish you had. And there were plans along the way to replace these rifles several times. Just wars kept breaking out and interrupting the plans. So they never got replaced. They just kept doing their job though, and doing it exceptionally well. And again, by the Brits and Commonwealth Nations focusing on the strengths of this, it actually turned out, in my opinion, to be the best rifle out there, along with the M1, which was just, that's a whole nother issue then. So that's a pretty important lesson there. Maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. So we know these were great battle rifles, but what makes them such great hunting rifles? And hey, that's what we're here to talk about. It's great hunting rifles, not battle rifles. And make no mistake about it. These are great hunting rifles. This might be the best deer rifle I've ever used. All right. So what makes them such great hunting rifles? Well, first, it's their battle rifle heritage. These guns are rugged. They were built to be tough, reliable, dependable, get the job done no matter what rifles, and they do it. They were built to go to hell and back. And quite a few of them have. Then there's the cartridge that they're chambered in. 303 British. That is just an outstanding intermediate, medium, big game cartridge. Ballistically, it is really, really close to a 308 Winchester. That's just a great hunting cartridge, especially for medium game, like deer. And then, all right, you still got the exceptionally smooth bolt and action on these. So, I mean, it's just an absolute pleasure to operate them. And there's one last thing on these that make these such a great hunting rifle, and it's something you got to shoot one to understand. But these rifles are just so easy to shoot accurately. They make it easy to shoot accurately. And that's, in part, the trigger. They have a two-stage trigger. Okay, and keep in mind, us hunters, we're losing track of what matters when it comes to hunting, as far as our gear and equipment and so forth. And a big part of that problem is we're spending too much time at the, I was about to say range, but no, we're spending too much time on the internet. All right, and then we go to the range, and then when we get back from the range, we listen to all them other people that spend all their time at the range. We're not spending our time out in the field. Okay, well, when you're spending your time in the field, that's when you really understand and appreciate a two-stage trigger. Today's rifles, the new ones, they're all coming with single-stage target triggers. And those triggers are absolutely wonderful from a supported position, like the bench at the range. And that's why so many today talk so much bad stuff about two-stage triggers and on and on and on and on about triggers. Well, yeah, if your criteria for judging a trigger in a rifle is how it's shot off the bench, you're going to want that single-stage target trigger. But if you're shooting in unsupported positions, if you pick that rifle up off the bench and you start shooting kneeling, standing, sitting, okay, then you realize the advantage of a two-stage trigger. And almost every single one of you, if you already have a rifle, yeah, you probably shoot it well off the bench. It's probably got a one-stage trigger. Go shoot it in a standing position or kneeling, unsupported, and almost every one of you would shoot better with this because of the trigger. What that two-stage trigger allows you to do, when you're unsupported, you've got movement. I mean, there's no way around it. Well, with a two-stage trigger, you can time the shot so that the rifle goes off exactly as your crosshair or front post gets on the target. Well, in the field, you're usually unsupported. And these rifles are exceptional in the field, and that's what they were built for. And that's why even today, after all these decades, military rifles almost always come with a two-stage trigger, still. They're better, in the field in unsupported positions. So that's what makes this such a great hunting rifle. It's tough, it's durable, wonderful cartridge, and the rifle itself just makes it so easy to put the bullet where it needs to go. What else could you ask for from a hunting rifle? A great hunting rifle. That's what great hunting rifles do, and these are great hunting rifles. Now, if any of you out there that aren't really familiar with Lee Enfields are thinking about getting one for hunting, for your hunting rifle, I wouldn't recommend it. And you have no idea how much it hurt me to say that because I do love these rifles. But these rifles are old. I mean, they're showing their age. I've retired this one because of a few issues with it. And you need to know what you're looking at when you're thinking of getting one of these. This one here, there is a lot of wear in the bore on it. The wood's warping on it. So the wood's touching the barrel, and after the barrel heats up, your shots will start stringing to the right. And I want to do a few things to it and tinker with it and try to get it back shooting like I know it can, but this gun's about done for. And a lot of them out there are. But there's still a lot of them in great shape, don't get me wrong. But this one here, it's in great shape, great bore on it, shoots good, it's a wonderful rifle, but you need to know what you're looking for. You need to know the difference between them. For instance, this one here is a number 1 Mark III. This one is a number 4 Mark I. Okay, they're different rifles. This one has a heavier barrel. This was a later design, and they wanted to increase the accuracy, so they put a heavier barrel on it, and they free floated the barrel. Okay, and the number 1 Mark IIIs, they're still accurate rifles, and these are just the 2 most common. But there's so many of them out there, and they were made in so many different countries. Long Branch, that's what this one is. So it was made in Canada at the Long Branch factory. This one here is a Ishapur, so it was made in India. There's BSAs made in England. There's Lithgows made in Australia. Those were wonderful rifles. There's so many, made at different plants, and I think that's kind of a testament to these. I've never heard anything bad about any of the plants. They were all great rifles. Usually you're going to hear, oh, this plant was the best, or this one. They're all great. But you need to know those differences. You need to know the different models, and you need to know what to check for on these, like checking for headspace issues. Yes, that can be fixed, but the largest spacer, the number 4s, there aren't any of those left. They got used. Now, maybe there's some enterprising company out there making spacers for these, but I don't know of any. So, these are old rifles, and if you're going to get one for hunting, you need to get one in good shape and know what you're doing. And unfortunately, most of the ones in really good shape, and there are some in excellent shape still. There's some still new in the box. But the ones in really good shape, for the most part, are unaltered in their original military configuration. They had the wood all the way down the barrel. Iron sights, peep sights on the number 4s. Those aren't exactly ideal for hunting. And me personally, I could never modify a Lee Enfield that's in really good shape in its original military configuration. I couldn't ever sporterize one to make it a great hunting rifle, just because I have too much respect for it as a military rifle in that condition. So it's kind of a catch-22, and it can be really difficult finding one of these to hunt with. Now, there were a lot of these converted after World War II. So there were some really nice conversions out there, and if you find one of those in good shape, that could be a really nice rifle. But those are hard to find these days. So that's kind of a tough one if you really wanted one of these to hunt with. You would need to learn a lot about them. So yeah, that's tough, and that hurts me to say, but we can still learn lessons from these though. And that goes back to what I said to start with about the battle rifle. If you're really wanting a new rifle, you've already got a rifle, but you really want a new one because of whatever reason, marketing's telling you that yours isn't good enough, your cartridge isn't enough, or your trigger isn't good enough, or you need this. Don't pay that any attention. Focus on what you have. What's the strength of what you have? What are the weaknesses? How can you maximize your strength and minimize your weaknesses? If you've got a target trigger, like I was just talking about, okay, strength is from a supported position, they're great triggers. They will help you shoot more accurately in a supported position. Okay, that's the strength. How do you take advantage of that? Well, you work real hard to make sure when you go to the field, you've got a supported position. Learn to shoot in the prone. Learn to shoot off of a bag, carry a bipod with you. Just work hard and figure out how can you create a supported position in the field. Or do everything you can to increase your stability. And as far as minimizing the weaknesses, what's difficult to shoot as accurate with a target trigger in an unsupported position. Well, when you go to the range, practice shooting in an unsupported position. All right, so if you focus on what you have, and not worrying about other things and making what you have the best it can be, you're probably going to be a lot better off than listening to marketing telling you, oh, you need this and this and this. I really wanted to do this today because, making the most of what you have instead of focusing on what you don't have, that is such an important lesson for every single one of us, especially with all the media and marketing out there right now, constantly telling you that what you have ain't good enough. Well, that's not true. And if you focus on what you have instead of what they're trying to sell you, you're almost always going to come out better. And I also wanted to do this for our friends in Australia that have subscribed to the channel, because this is a rifle that doesn't get talked about much outside of the Commonwealth countries. And these are great rifles. They're worth talking about. And for those of you in the Commonwealth nations, Canada, Australia, India, South of Africa, those of you that know what great rifles these are, there are a few of us here in the U.S. that do appreciate them. And I'm certainly one of them. I've killed more deer with this rifle right here than any other rifle I owned. I mean, it has never let me down. I've never lost a deer with it. I mean, it's just, I can't say enough good about it. And I know these rifles got used extensively for hunting after the war. And for those of you that don't know about these, for the Commonwealth countries, Canada, Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa, Great Britain, this is the equivalent of the U.S. 1903 Springfield, M1 Garand, 1917 Eddystone, all rolled up into one. All right. The Commonwealth nations used these in 2 world wars. If I'm not mistaken, in Korea. So, I mean, these were used by a lot of people. I think 17 million of them were made. And those countries, because they had so many surplus rifles after the war, they had so much surplus ammunition, just like our 30-06 here in the U.S., these got used for some serious hunting. And the guys up in Canada, I mean, they were killing big game with these rifles. I mean, these were common for moose. So, again, just wonderful rifles that they're not mentioned nearly enough. I think they deserve a lot more recognition than they get. And I wanted to make sure they got a little recognition today. So, okay, as for the channel, I normally try to upload videos every Sunday at 1. Deer season just kicked off. I'm going to be busy, so my schedule is going to be kind of crazy. And I'm probably not going to get to upload quite as regularly. I'm going to be out hunting. Matter of fact, I blew it on one last night. Our second day, one walked out on me at 10 yards, and she started playing the stomping game, and I always lose at the stomping game. And for those of you that don't know the stomping games, where they just stand there and stomp their foot, staring straight at you, trying to get you to move. She caught me in a really awkward position. Hopefully I'll get to expand on that a little bit more later. But yeah, so I'm going to be hunting. I won't be uploading here as often over the next month or two. But after November, I should be uploading once a week again, hopefully, God willing, and we'll see. But anyway, if you like this, subscribe to the channel, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see notifications, hit the notification bell. God bless, and have a good day.